bathroom was he did not wash his hands.
Okay, this should be good. Work. I'm just making sure this works. Really? Oh, I'll fix that. Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. I'm very quickly going to fix the comments. Actually, we'll be back in 1 second.
An outsider has arrived on our shores. Will they defeat the festering evil that is gaining power, or will they embrace it, slaughtering all who live? Repair or destroy? Trade or steal? This
Okay. Okay, hello. Hopefully y'all can hear me. Cool. All right, well, hello. I'm Josh. I'm the lead dev of Ardenfall, and here we have some devs from Wayward Realms as well. I guess Jared first. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jared. I am the lead narrative designer on Ardenfall, and I am a senior quest designer on Wayward Realms.
Hi, I'm Victor. I'm creative producer on Wayward Realms.
I'm Blake. I'm a designer and the lead writer for Wayward Realms.
Cool. Yeah. So two very similar games. I guess just in case we can each do a quick elevator pitch of our game. So for Ardenfall, inspired by Morrowind and Fallout New Vegas. Um, Open world RPG, lots of dialogue, lots of quests, handcrafted world, designed to be kind of a small but deep world. And then one of you.
Yeah, so Wayward Realms is spiritual successor to Daggerfall. So kind of bringing back that scope, not only in like the size of the world, because we want big, giant, realistic, fully scaled world, but also the depth of like the role playing mechanics, the stats, all that good stuff in RPGs.
Yeah, I really like that our games are like, in a lot of ways similar, but in a lot of ways opposites,
Mhm.
um, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, so the kind of the topic, the overall topic for this stream is world building. Pretty much everyone here is involved with writing, so um, mostly writing focused. There's a few questions I have about kind of level design, but more from a writer's perspective. But yeah, we'll get to that. Also, if any of y'all have questions, be sure to message, post them, whatever, and we can go through those as well. I guess Jared, do you want to? Let's do a
Yeah.
quick kind of icebreaker question. Jared, what's your favorite RPG?
Fallout New Vegas. Without hesitation. Fallout New Vegas. Thousands of
I
hours
would
in
have
that
never
game.
guessed.
Yeah, so I don't talk about it or anything. So
Really? No.
I also didn't almost faint when I met Chris Avalone. So
I have a picture of that too.
Sounds
It's
good.
great. It's my wallpaper.
it's your wallpaper.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah,
see
no, that was a good day. Vic, what's your favorite RPG?
Daggerfall, to no surprise, I think there. Something about Daggerfall that like other games can't really emulate or like haven't really tried to. It's just like it's a much closer to a tabletop experience, and so like you really kind of feel this like that you're in this world and you can really role play and really
Yeah, there's no real other game that scratches that itch, unfortunately. Like with Fallout New Vegas, I can go play like Wasteland and stuff, and Fallout 2 kind of scratches the itch, But yeah, there's really nothing like Daggerfall yet.
Yet.
Am I next?
Yes.
That would be you.
Okay, my favorite RPG is Skyrim. I'm kidding. Probably I'm honest. I'm tied between Fallout 2 and Fallout New Vegas.
Cool. And then for me, Fallout New Vegas. And then, yeah, I mean, it's basically what Jared said. It's really good. Morrowind.
Everybody making the Scrolls-like games loves Fallout New Vegas.
I should have known that question would just lead to what. I mean, yeah, surprise. We're all nerds for the things that we're working on. Surprise.
Yeah, we're all biased.
Oh, and someone asked, are questions supposed to be strictly around design and theory, or just anything? Honestly, anything. We can do quick answers on just questions on the game as well while we're at it.
Preferably no math questions. Did not prepare in time for that. I'm behind on my algebra.
Yeah, we're not going to do your homework. That's ChatGPT for you. So.
Yeah, I just got rid of my Brilliant subscription, so I wouldn't be any good.
Cool. Jared, you have the questions. So you want to ask the first one?
Yeah. So, how do we build lore that players actually care about on Ardenfall and the Wayward Realms? So, who wants to kick that off? Do we want to start that on the Wayward side or the Ardy side?
Send it over to Blake.
Oh, great. Now I have nothing to compare to. Okay, just throw me to the wolves. Thank you, Victor. A lot of the times it's just interesting stories that we want to try to tell within the world and then sort of break them up into pieces and let players discover them. Whether that's through quests or through lore books or through environmental storytelling or through history, things like that. So when we do world building for the Wayward Realms, we try to parallel our own world and make it as realistic as possible. Like we've got a timeline that spans back over 10,000 years of history. So we've got like hundreds of pages on an internal wiki. So we're trying to get as close as we can to having almost, like a parallel copy of our own world, but set in our own fantasy, universe. Is that good enough, Victor?
I'm not entirely disappointed, so I think it'll work.
Fantastic. That's what my mom said when yep.
I think that the approach for writing lore in Ardenfall has really evolved over the years. I think that originally it was very Josh started the lore, so I guess Josh can talk about how it started, but it's kind of evolved into just what's fun and why should the player care. That which is something that Chris actually really drills into your head if you meet him. Just why should the player care is kind of what everything should lead back to in a video game. Like, this is cool, but why does the player care? Mm-hmm. But yeah, originally there's a lot more rules to the lore originally, I'd say. would you say, Josh?
Yeah, I can go into that. Um, my original way of writing from the beginning was very, yeah, like you said, rules. This is how the world works. No ghosts, for example, was one of the rules. Um, and and the way I wrote lore was very usually like this is, focused on realism or focused on just fleshing stuff out, which is good as a foundation, but at some point you need to get into like what Jared was saying. What matters to the player, the actual person playing the game. Not necessarily what's in a book. That's good. Books are good. Books are great. But what's really important at the end of the day is what affects the game itself, the quests. So, something that happened 1,000 years ago on a planet, on a different, you know, continent, probably not the most important to focus on when you're writing. You could write some paragraphs. Maybe you're obsessed with it, so you do end up writing a lot about it. But that's not as important as what's happening in the game, in the world, what's
Things
happening
that
to the
players
people.
will find, things that players can figure out. Yeah.
And it helps you when you think of that, you actually can morph the lore to work with that. Like, oh, okay, um, I want this empire in the past. Well, make it relevant. Don't just write it, but you want to make it matter. So then that means you might make it so, oh, it caused this shift in culture that you can see to this day. And you can compare it to how it was before and after, and that's crazy. Well, they changed, and that actually matters.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was nice coming into the restricted environment though, because I wasn't really a fantasy writer when I joined Ardenfall. I was much more of like a apocalyptic sci-fi type of like a setting writer, or like a modern like cyberpunk type of a writer. And I feel like if I hadn't had those restraints, there would have been like a lot of ghosts and deicide and just a lot of fantasy tropes that people generally fall back on to keep things interesting, that I wasn't able to fall back on to keep it interesting. And I really had to think about the natural world and things that could go on within it to keep it interesting. I couldn't fall back on the supernatural. I'm glad we have it now, but yeah, I think for like the years and years I couldn't really that I kind of had to that I couldn't really think in those realms. It really helped me to get my mind on fantasy and the time period that you kind of draw from when you write fantasy, and um, looking at how different people write fantasy, looking at, like Morrowind versus like, Pillars versus like Divinity versus like old D&D versus new D&D. Yeah, I think it did a lot for just my ability to write and think about fantasy worlds. Uh, Moving on to questions.
Someone asked, or someone made a comment. Common issue I see isn't putting all the interesting shit several hundred years before the player's alive. Um, Absolutely true. I think
Yeah.
it's the same reason why you often see a lot of interesting shit outside of the game, because it's so much easier. I can say there were giants and gods the size of oceans and weird shit because it's not in the game. We can do whatever. But
Yeah.
the moment it's in the game, you are restricted by it being a game inherently.
Yeah, that's one of the first and biggest rules that Ted had for the writers was, we need to. It's okay to write about cool stuff in the past, but we want to have most of the cool stuff happen with the player, like something the player can experience and actually get to live that cool history, not just read about it.
Totally. Yeah,
Um,
Jared, you can next.
so open worlds, bigger or deeper? I feel like it's like shoe and shoelace. One is useless without the other. I feel like in my personal opinion, I like deeper. I would rather have deeper than massive. But if there's some way to, but again, it's so ambiguous because like in the case of Daggerfall, it's deep because of it's big. Um, like it's not deep because of how you interact with characters. It's deep because you actually put a backpack on and you take your horse and you ride 30 fucking real life miles to the next town. That's why it is deep. So yeah, it's a hard, but I would say if I had to choose one, I'd go with deeper. Because that's what drew me to New Vegas, was just how deep the character interactions went, and it wasn't even like the twists. It was just like there were so many things that you were like, "Yep, that's a video game. I did it, and now it's not gonna matter." And then it would matter in so many ways down the line. And it just and like you were always like getting off the beaten trail and finding stuff. So I would say when you found something, again, it wasn't just like, oh, here's a weapon that's slightly stronger than it, but it would be like a weapon with a name and a story that belonged to someone, and you could like read stuff in the vault, and it would be like, oh, I left my pistol named this guy in the vault because of this happened, and I don't know. Yeah, in Fallout New Vegas, everything has a meaning, and that's really what made me want to make video games. So that's my long-winded way of saying deeper.
Yeah, I do think part of it like depends on what your goals are for the game and that open world. Like certainly for Wayward Realms, we do put a lot of emphasis on that scope because we want it to feel like an actual, country, like an actual kingdom that you are just stuck in the middle of, and it's up to you to find your way through it, right? And you can certainly have those pockets of depth where you can dive into the lore or the mechanics and stuff like that, right? But to us, that sense of scale is also equally as important. And there's always that discussion of like the theme park video games, and having that much narrower scope and things that like are more specific to the player, right? You walk into a town and a scripted scene plays out, and you get all this story through that, as opposed to something like what we're aiming for with Wayward Realms, which is just a simulated world. And part of that is like the virtual game master is supposed to sort of give you those moments where you get that injection of story and stuff like that, just depending on where you go. So you can kind of, it's sort of trying to meet in the middle, I guess, of that big scope, but also the deep and rich storytelling that you can tell within it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Go.
Blake.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said hi, kiddo. I was very confused. Yeah, I think just to echo what Jared and Victor said, it really depends on the type of game you're making. But at the end of the day, it's the stories that you're wanting to tell in it, and the type of player interaction you're wanting. And honestly, like Wayward Realms sits in the really weird spot between very linear RPGs and RPGs that are like very open to player choice, like Daggerfall, because there's more of that like handcrafted element to the stories, and it's a lot deeper than Daggerfall was, but it's not, limiting player interactions, so it pulls from both.
Yeah, Wayward Realms is definitely a funky mix of the two.
Yeah,
Definitely is.
that's one word for it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something, yeah, that I've never seen. But yeah, because like you said, it's definitely like the character interactions are deeper than Daggerfall. Like the character interactions are better than Daggerfall, and kind of like your ability to get tossed into the middle of a handcrafted story unexpectedly is better than Daggerfall. I feel like in Daggerfall, like it's like like the elementary school play feeling where you're very aware you're watching a play. Like I feel like in Daggerfall, like I'm very aware I'm playing like procedurally generated quests. So yeah, it's a cool mixture. It's like I said, really hard question because I feel like the two kind of feed into each other if done right, and they kind of oppose each other if done wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something that was mentioned was, this is kind of an off topic, but on topic. Open world telling any story is really hard because of we can't just, you walk, and if you're doing a true simulation and you don't do any tricks, which you'll end up doing, at the end of the day, once you actually build a complex story, you will end up doing tricks. There's no way around it. But reducing those tricks a lot is really hard. If you're walking into a town and you're expecting the player to talk to someone, well, they might be sleeping, or who knows where they're going to be. They could be anywhere. Who knows? Maybe you're doing another quest and they're doing something with that. Like, who the hell knows? And that causes basically exponential complexities once you implement a full story, especially if it's like a long story. Very complicated.
Well, and they can get ridiculous. Like we have like Arakasha guards in the beginning, or like originally we had like mercenaries guild people in the first town, and it just got to this point where it was like, okay, well, like, what if they don't do anything in the first town? What if they just like skip the first town and they just leave and they go into the open world and they get to this and they join a guild and then they come back after they've joined the guild and now they're like part of the mercenaries guild when they're doing this thing that was supposed to be the first quest in the game, and now they're getting talked to like down to like a civilian when they're actually part of the guild. So you have to like you have to start accounting for some pretty absolutely ridiculous edge cases. Which is where the tricks come in handy. But yeah, they don't always exist. They're not always there. Like the trick for that one was don't make the mercenaries guild there in the beginning.
Another trick would just be throwing in a line. Like, in that example, you could just have them say, I don't care if you're a part of the guild, and then they continue their normal dialogue.
Yeah.
And that's usually, like, that's
a lot of what Fallout New Vegas does.
Do. Yeah, New Vegas specifically, I mean, not only because of voice acting, but also because at some point you can't add infinite lines to a quest, because you can do that all day. Every quest should affect this. It's stupid. So at some point you got to stop, and so those tricks help a lot.
Should we move on to question 3?
Yes.
What makes environmental storytelling work? This is not my area of expertise, so I'll let someone else talk first.
Environmental storytelling.
It's not my expertise either.
Yeah, so I'm going to assume this is still tied to narrative and writing, since this is obviously writing. So what makes it work?
I guess just like, again, like just thinking about like, why should the player care that you're telling the story with the environment? Does it lead you to something? Is it a puzzle? Is it going to be important in some other town? I think environmental storytelling works when it's like apparent enough to see, because like, when you see a bunch of skeletons with swords in their hands, you're like, oh, a battle must have happened here. It's got to be like, you have to be like apparently know what you're seeing, but like it's also got to be not random. Like people, I think that's their biggest complaint with Fallout is like 200 years later and the skeletons are still in the street. So like I think you just kind of need to think about reason and why should the player think about it like this and care when you're it's just like another balancing act.
Yeah, I will challenge you a little bit though and say like I don't think it always has to be apparent, because I think there is a reward also for those players who do want to dig in deep and notice those little details, like say in Wayward Realms, for like a lot of the architecture, well, not a lot of, but like the major cities in Splendor will have some architecture that's like orcish ruins on as like a base level with human ruins built, or human buildings built on top of those. And you could not pay attention and just see like stone blocks and then Tudor style housing, right? But if you are paying attention, you're like, yeah, those are orcish buildings or building blocks, and then you kind of piece two together and say this used to be orcish territory or an orcish city and stuff, and now humans rule over this place. So, and obviously that's a very shallow example, but like
no, but you're right. You want little details. You want little details. It's true.
Yeah, usually when you design architecture, pretty much 100% of the time you're designing architecture, you're doing that kind of thought process. What are we building and why, and what is this, right? So if you're building a city, that's the details matter, and you will be putting those details in inherently. And that's definitely part of the.
Yeah, that's definitely a more granulated form than I was thinking of. I guess I was thinking of like set pieces, but you're right. It can. But I said like I'm not like I'm like a hobbyist level designer, so I'm not the most qualified for that one.
Now for quests, you do pretty much need it to be pretty obvious. Unless you're wanting to build like an Elden Ring, like kind of fuck you quest, which you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people like that, obviously. So
the item description is "figure it out, bitch" or something. Yeah, like that's playing Dark Souls, bro. It's so cryptic, it's crazy.
I think I will say that like environmental storytelling is also, it depends on the type of game you're making. Like if it's heavily procedural, like Caves of Cud, that game is 100% environmental storytelling.
I've never played it, but I've heard so much about it.
Yeah, our art lead is a huge fan of it. He did like an entire 45-minute presentation one day when I brought up concerns about environmental storytelling. He's like, "No, that'll work."
Yeah, it's I've heard nothing but great things. If I just I'm like I remember when I met Josh and he was like, I don't play games, I just make games, and I was like, what? And now I'm just like so far in the belly of the beast that that's pretty basically where I am. I keep like a PSP or like a DS or like a handheld gaming system so I can get like 45 minutes of gaming in before I physically can't keep my eyes open anymore, just to feel like I like played a game. But yeah, I'm just like doing Unity or Unreal Engine basically from when I wake up to when I go to bed.
Yep, yep. That's my Steam Deck. That's my
Yeah.
source of gaming now. And if a game's not on Steam Deck, then I will probably not play it, sadly.
I
Sometimes I
mean, I
just
have
play
like
Ardenfall.
every console in the world behind me. I just don't see much use anymore, unfortunately.
Yep.
Still got to keep the classics on deck, though. You
Of
know,
course.
I don't own 5 copies of that game. I don't own it on every single machine I own that it's out for. We
I
have
totally haven't seen all of them.
why do some RPG towns feel alive while others feel empty? I I, I think that a big example of this is like Fallout New Vegas is my huge example for towns that feel because like I don't know, it's a town of like 5 in Fallout New Vegas will feel more alive than a town of like 30 in like other RPGs because every person in the Fallout New Vegas town is like named and has like some drama going on with some of the other characters that they're giving you breadcrumbs about, and there's always something more that meets like you get excited when you get to a New Vegas town, and it's not about like the shops here, it's not about the weapon, it's about like who's in this town that I get to talk to? Like what am I going to peel into this town and find out?
I think it,
You just they're just it sets an expectation by like town 3 that there's going to be some weird thing underneath the surface of every town and all of its characters.
I think it helps that Fallout New Vegas is also post-apocalypse. If you had
Yeah.
a Fallout New Vegas city and it was like set in The Witcher and it's the biggest city in The Witcher, it would not work.
That's fair.
There's that as well.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think it's part of its setting, but a lot of it too is I guess Jared, to add on to what you were saying, is character interaction. Because the more interactability you have in a specific location, even if there's very few people, the more of an impression that'll leave on a player. So they'll be more satisfied if there's less characters than if there were tens of thousands of them, but all they would do is say hello and goodbye.
Yeah, or even
Yeah.
it's a lot of them. It's like the nameless NPC thing. Like in like the games where like the nameless NPCs will give you quests. Uh, Villager, my daughter is at this cave. Please go get my daughter from this cave. Like it's like it's so like fill in the blank and the blanks aren't even filled in creatively. Like and it's yeah, it's there's just no connection. Like why do I care about this dude or his daughter? Like why do I care? He doesn't even seem worried. I don't even know his
Yeah.
name. But in New Vegas, it'd be like my daughter makes my medicine for my leg injury from when I saved her as a child. I'm a hero and my leg is injured. Please don't. She's my sunshine, my only sunshine. Don't make me. Fuck! I gotta get this dude's kid back. He's got an injured leg. He's a hero. I gotta get this dude's kid back. Like it's always it's always giving you that context that like emotionally ties you to what it is you're doing, even if it's just a fetch quest. You never feel like it's a fetch quest because you start to weirdly care about what you're doing.
I think with
Yep. I think.
cities,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
uh, sorry. I think with cities, another aspect that can help is if there's reactivity. If you can affect the city somehow, even if it's something like not that something that technically doesn't matter, but it's visual, that could be huge. Um,
Mhm.
just making it feel alive.
Yeah, there's one specific example I can think of in Fallout 2 where I think if you drop dynamite down a toilet, it blows up and it covers the entire city in Brahmin poop.
Yeah. I was going to actually also tie it back to the environmental storytelling again, where I think if like a town has like an obvious history that you can see, if it like sort of makes sense where it's located, if you can see sort of like resources that, the townspeople use, like whether it be crops or like a nearby mine or something like that, you kind of just sort of put two and two together also, and you sort of just build this image of how this town exists and what they do, their day-to-day lives, and in sense like that, like you make it feel alive because you understand how it works.
Looks like we got some questions. Let's see, I'll pick one. We won't be able to answer them all, sadly, but
Oh, that's good though.
how do you approach making the world open? Most of you mentioned New Vegas, but I would consider that a linear game is how the map and quests are designed. It's a road trip. How/if does the player look at a far off mountain or town and say, I want to see that, and want to go there, basically?
Yeah, like points of interest and stuff that lead you to like the next. I mean, I'm trying to kind of get a
Also,
grasp
I
on
thought
what
I
it is you're.
understood it, but now I'm reading it, and now I actually don't understand it. But I would consider that a linear game.
The way I understand it is kind of the debate between theme park games and very vast games with nothing when you're wandering until you hit a town or point of interest.
Yeah, I think it's
They're
how do you
different
design that with
design
quests?
philosophies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
Open worlds are hard. I think that's an obvious thing that we can all say. Open worlds, for me, in my
Yeah.
opinion, open worlds are pretty much the hardest way you can design a world.
yeah,
Inherently, it's like anti-storytelling. Stories for the last 10,000 years have been linear, at
yeah.
least vast majority of the time. And now it's like, well, fuck you, they're not anymore. Um,
Well, and even when they weren't, you had to fit it into a book.
yeah, like
Like, yeah,
yeah, pick your own adventure or whatever, but still, like 99% of the time. So it kind of goes against that, and it kind of goes against the controls we've had with linear games, um, which are very useful. There's a reason they exist. Um, that doesn't answer how we do it. It just says it's hard. With pain and suffering. That's my answer.
a lot of testing. Yeah, a lot of like actually like getting into engine and walking back and forth between shit, and a lot of like, man, is this too boring? Have I walked too far without seeing point of interest? Having good level designers really, really, really helps. I can say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And also, like, luckily we're able to build on all these games that have come before that have done it well, and we can see like what works. Other games that like maybe didn't do it so well, we can see what doesn't work and sort of just find our own personal approach to achieve our goals that we're trying to do within the game. But building on those that base level that has already been established.
Yeah, I think one thing that happens inevitably with a lot of open world RPGs is that the main story means less than other games. Like in other games, the main story is all there is. Um, and it turns out to be usually really, really good. I can't really think of many times where there's an open world RPG where the story is just fucking insane, like the best story ever. I can't think of any, because a story goes against, like an overarching story goes against what an open world is all about. You can have a good one, but yeah, that's my take at least.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be like insane set piece after set piece and narrative twist after narrative twist, right? It all just kind of, it's sort of like little bits of story here and there that you can experience in various ways and fashions, and so it never has that really strong cohesion to it. But I mean, there's good stories to be found within it. Just it won't be that
Yeah.
very traditional narrative style.
Yeah, I would argue that one game that did it really well was LA Noire. The writing in that game was fantastic, but it's because all of its stories are sort of segmented out and pretty much self-isolated. It wasn't one long continuous story.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really just referring to the overarching story. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, like the main. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because Ardenfall doesn't. Well, from the very beginning, the pitch was Ardenfall doesn't have a main story at all, and we would just fully embrace the idea of here is this world, there are stories to be found, go out and do it, and that's actually how it is still. We do have a potential story planned, um, but that is more of an ending, more than less than a story. But that we don't know if that will actually happen because we just went all in on open world stories.
Yeah, very similar approach with Wayward Realms, where we don't have a main story, and that was sort of in the beginning. We were just kind of doing the world building, right? Because we need to know where the stories are going to be based on, right? So we're doing all this world building, and then Ted comes to us and like says, "I don't think we're going to do a main story." And the first reaction is, of course, like, "What? What? You're crazy, right?" Like, But then you start to think about it, and it's like, yeah, like that does give the player more agency as to what kind of story they can experience, right? Instead of us forcing them into this narrative that we've concocted, they can sort of take their character and experience something on their own.
Well, it's not
Yeah.
to say that there's not like main story like stories to be told either. Like, I know that we have some political stuff planned in Ardenfall that is kind of like main story like, and there's a lot of like a lot of dramas and sieges and stuff in Wayward Realms that are very like main quest like a lot of world events that are very main quest like. Yeah, it's just not trapping you into this beginning and end loop. I just feel that now these big world events are a nice surprise when you stumble upon them, rather than something that's trapping you into taking you from the first city to the last city.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think too, like games without a main storyline is like the main story is usually beholden to the mechanics that are in the game, but a game without a main storyline, you're able to go a bit more deeper with like character customization and character interactions, like the game that Jared and I are working on in our spare time. Like from the outset, I was like, I don't think I want to do a main story in this, and then proceeded to design most of the game's mechanics around the lore of the world instead of an actual story. And there's so much more depth that you can add.
Very Tim Kaine, very Troika, Blake.
I mean, it's a spiritual successor to a Troika game, so you know.
Oh yeah, it's that's to call it an anything at this point. It's an Unreal project with some stuff in it, but
Yeah, that too.
it's fun though. It's like a hobby thing.
Yeah.
Do we have more questions or should I move
You go.
on?
Yeah.
Cool. How much realism does a fantasy RPG need? I was just talking about this. I'm not in charge of this, so don't. But I don't. I mean, I think very minimal. I was just watching this thing with George Lucas where they were criticizing a creature that like couldn't fly, that like wouldn't anatomically be able to fly. George Lucas was like, "Oh, his big fat belly is full of helium. Like a byproduct of his digestive system is helium, so that's why he can fly." And that's why I feel like every fantasy author should approach questions about their world or it's just like, "Fuck you, I made it. I made it up. Fuck you. That's how it is. It's like that because it is." And there's so much stuff in real life that if people had to write real life, like that frog that jumps and then paralyzes itself mid jumps and just like lands on the floor like a pancake and like if you made that up in a game, people would be like, well, that would never really evolve there. That's not really a predatory advantage. I don't really know why. But it exists in real life. Like if you tried to make a duckbill platypus as an animal in a game with too much realism, somebody would be there like, well, I don't really think a mammalian creature would be laying eggs and having a duckbill and poison quills. That doesn't really make sense. I mean, evolutionarily, I don't really know why that would exist. Um, and reality makes mistakes all the time. There's stupid shit that happens in reality all the time. Not everything needs to make sense. Things in reality don't make sense all the time. There's tons about life that don't make sense to people. That's not to say you can't have like a cohesive history or like things that make sense or like science in your world. I don't think that you should ruin your fun factor over it, and I don't think that you should I don't think you should trap yourself in it. It's a tool. It's
an
it's a
obsession,
tool to
which
be
it
used,
can
not
be
a
an
box
obsession.
to be put in. Yes, it's
And it shouldn't be. Yeah, it's a tool. It's not the end goal, in my opinion. It shouldn't be. We're making. I mean, unless you you know, if that's your niche, right? This game is the most ultra realistic game on the planet Earth. Fine, you know that's fair actually. But if it's not, if your game is meant to be fun, then that immediately evokes fun over realism. An example would be I've been playing Zomboid, Project Zomboid, and at first I'm like, wow, this game's really realistic. It has a lot of mechanics, tons of ridiculous mechanics. You can get depression, you get anxiety, you can like lose one of your shoes if you trip, and endless mechanics like that. And I thought, wow, this is like realism. Then I realized it's not real. It's not realistic. It's just deep, and the mechanics don't exist because it's realistic that your shoe would fall off, but no, it's actually fun to like have to check your shoes and get certain types of shoes that won't fall off and blah blah blah. Oh, Jared, we can't hear you. I think you're muted.
You're still muted in Discord.
Yeah, sorry, I've been muting
There
my
you go.
mic this whole time instead of Discord, so I've like forgot to check that. One thing I've noticed about realism in games that goes overboard is that they always want to do it in not fun ways. Like video games are always obsessed with realism in ways that inconvenience you and never in ways that convenience you. Like, in the game, like, you'll try to reload your gun and oh, the gun jammed, so you gotta sit there and fuck with it to get it to reload and fire again, and like they'll do that type of realism, but like then you'll try to like get away from someone and you'll try to like jump through like a giant O-shaped rock, but the whole thing's a collider, so you can't go through the hole in the middle of it. No, can't have any realism that way. Can't focus on that realism. Only the realism that completely fucks you over and isn't fun.
I think a big thing on it is that it just needs to be realistic to like its internal rules, right? Like whatever you're setting for your world, as long as you're sticking to those rules, then that believability, that realism is going to come through to the player, and they're not going to be wondering like why that that creature that shouldn't be able to fly is flying, because it does fit within this world that you've created.
Yeah, clear rules are a big thing, definitely.
Yep. You stole what I was going to say, Victor. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else on that? Do we have any questions or anything? Do you have anything to add, Josh?
Let's see. I think we just continue.
Yeah. I would say enough to make cohesive sense. And like you guys said, to follow the rules set in that world and have consistent rules.
I guess I do have one last thing. On that. Yeah, I mean, like an example of that where it could fail is if you set up something's important and then it becomes not in the story. That's where an example where you can be like, well, that's an internal rule. Like post-apocalypse, water's really important, but they didn't dig into anything about water. Like Fallout 3. Not to shit on Fallout 3, but like when you decide something's important and you push that it's important, then it's time to actually care about it. If we're not talking about where do you shit, then yeah, ignore it. 99.9% of games do that. That's fine. But if you're pushing in a post-apocalypse that water's really important, all of a sudden that matters, or food, or whatever.
Ah, that's a good point. Biggest mistakes in RPG world building and how to avoid them. Oh man, I feel like we could write a fucking book on this, dude.
Oh yeah.
I have my favorite. If
go ahead, yeah.
Okay, my favorite is trying to world build through exposition dumps on players and dialogue. That one's fantastic because nobody's gonna pay attention. Like if you have an interesting story to tell it multiple ways through different parts. Don't just like force the player to read 5 paragraphs of information and then have them loop back into a dialogue tree, then have to read more about it.
Yeah, I have a very specific writing rhythm I've developed in Ardenfall where it's like I don't have like a max character limit I could tell you. I know like there's like a line and then another line, and if it goes beyond that, more than like one thing beyond that, like that's just too much to fit in one text box. And if I have more than like 4 or 5 text boxes that you have to click before the next multiple choice or return to topic, like that's just like too much text for like one, like, and I have to like split it up into a couple of questions. If it takes like 10 text boxes, like 2 sentences each to explain something, I've asked too broad of a question and I need to split it up into different questions and give them. So yeah, I think that pacing is like a huge part of it. Like yeah, so yeah, like lore dumping is bad, and forcing your lore where it doesn't belong too many times can be bad. It can. Again, it gives the like I'm very aware I'm watching a play right now type of a feeling.
Mm-hmm. I think also just always going for like the rule of cool, right? Like if too many things are just like crazy and over the top, like it becomes like almost a parody, right? So
yeah, well, and if everything is awesome, nothing is awesome.
Yeah, that's Chris sent me like a PDF full of like writing rules, and one of my favorite. It actually changed the way Ardenfall, literally changed how Ardenfall is. There was one page called "If Everyone's a Special Snowflake, No One Is," and it completely revolutionized how I thought Garkai. The demo and the demo of Garkai would not be how it is if I would have read that first. There would not be 46 named characters in Garkai, all with a backstory and all with missions, and it just which I don't know, probably sounds bad when I say it out loud to a player, but trust me, it would have been better. It would have been good. There would have been more missions, and there would have been more to do.
Of time being put into it.
Yeah,
it's not like we were like we should have done 10 and just fucked around for the rest of the time.
Just the time
the
could
amount
have
of time
been
we have is the same.
creatively
Yeah,
and energetically put better places.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't a waste of like it was a waste of design too, because like he said, it was now that everybody has something to say, you don't care about what anyone has to say after like the first 5 or 6 people. Another thing that made me feel that was Divinity Original Sin 2. In the boat, when you're in the boat in the beginning, and everyone has like a million lines of like a million lines of dialogue, and I forget it, and by like the third person you're like, fuck dude, I've been on this boat for 45 minutes and I've walked like 10 feet. like I've spent 50 minutes of real world gameplay, and I've moved from like this wall to like this wall in the same room, and I don't want to talk to anyone anymore. Just get me off this boat. And I didn't want to do that with Arden. I didn't want talking to a character to be like this half-hour time engagement. And so and it because again, it's like it's a fun novelty for like an NPC. But after like the third, fourth, fifth one, you're just like, okay, can I fucking cast a spell at someone? Can I get into a fight? Can I leave this room and go see some stuff?
I think wow, I forgot what I was gonna say.
And I love that game, by the way. Like, that's not to say that game is bad. That's just it was a lesson I learned about very lengthy dialogues from it. I do love the Divinity Original Sin games.
I remember now. It's hard to know what's important, like actually important. Like because the player cares about that. Like what actually matters. Does this? Am I going to get a quest at some point? If I'm dedicating 30 minutes talking to this NPC, am I going to get a really cool quest and then have a whole story? Because if so, hell yeah, I'll be here for 30 minutes. But if I'm talking to this NPC and they're just kind of a character who exists, it'd be cool if there was just a way to say, hey, this doesn't matter, but you can like talk anyways. We had that kind of concept with the lore tag, a little icon that would appear next to lore, kind of saying, hey, this doesn't matter, but
if you want to know it, here it is.
We did end up removing it because it kind of ended up being very vague, like what is lore, what is not. But if we did want to, like, if someone on the team really wanted to just like add kind of dialogue dumps, then that's a way you could do it. It's like, here's this backstory, for example, or something like that. Just communicating.
There are games that use like different colored fonts and stuff like that to like really catch your attention. Like say, hey, this is something you should pay attention to, right? It's going to be important, but otherwise you can just like scroll through everything else.
Yeah, we started to do that with lore words and like quest words eventually. Like lore words are yellow and quest words are purple. Yeah, communication's a big one. Just always making sure that you're communicating to the player, even if it's subtly.
Communication's huge. This is kind of a offshoot, but communicating everything, it's important, especially when you have a really big game. When you have a giant game with all these systems, but you're not communicating, half the time, might as well the systems not even exist. Like, it doesn't matter that, like, did you know that the whole game is simulated and every NPC has their, they eat each grain of rice, and like, who cares if they're simulating it and you never see it and you could, whatever, right? Maybe it's fun to like have a few wacky features. They're like, hey, did you know? That's cool. But is it worth spending 1,000 hours developing that? Probably not. But if you
unless you're Rockstar,
unless you have $2 billion to dump into a game, then you can.
Then the computer characters can eat their steak bit by bit.
Yeah, that's fine. But if you don't have $1 billion,
that stuff's like great for tech demos when you can like just focus in and say like this is like the neat things we can do. But like when
proof of concept playing, stuff,
they're not gonna sit there and watch each grain of rice getting eaten or whatever. Right?
Yeah, well, and again, like if you have the manpower and that's important to your audience, but like most audiences, it's not, and most people don't have that manpower. Ardenfall certainly doesn't have that manpower. So yeah, there's it's a lot. There's a lot of pitfalls you can fall into with open world building. It's definitely more of an art than a science, because all open worlds are different. I mean, does my open world have mountains? Is it a series of islands? I mean, the terrain and the story and the time period affects what you're able to do and how you're able to bar players and
even like how you traverse it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No. Yeah. It's huge difference. Yeah. Is it in a fantasy setting? Will I be able to ride some magnificent flying beast across this, or is the biggest flying animal in my game an eagle, and we can't fly shit? So. Yeah, no, there's a lot to think about, and you will make mistakes. I don't think you can avoid them all. You just kind of need to learn to roll with the punches when you're making an open world game. I mean, I'm sure like huge corporations have ways of boiling it down to a science, but with a small
They
team,
fail.
an experimental or innovative game, or it's gonna be
Well, when it becomes a science, it becomes uninteresting because
Yeah.
everything's just sort of the same.
It becomes what we see in the industry.
yeah.
Which is
Limitations make the best art, and it's true. I always go back to the Silent Hill example, where like the fog was never supposed to be in Silent Hill, but the PS1 didn't have the rendering capabilities, so they added the fog so that there would be a realistic reason why these houses were just coming into view, and it made the game so fucking scary. So yeah, working within limitations is always great.
That's another big
Just
one.
have to be the
Actually,
right ones.
yeah, that's a huge one. Especially when you're starting a project, you need to set big limitations, big ass limitations. You can't just say it's gonna be an everything game because then it's gonna be a nothing game. You need
Mhm.
like big strokes, and it might change. Games always change. You can plan all you want day one. It's always gonna change, but you need to set restrictions. Like for
I
us,
think
we're gonna make a big game. Okay, well then what's the restriction? Obviously, our art style is very simplified. That was a huge restriction from day one. What else? No voice acting. Um, no main story. Those are all restrictions. We should have had more, way more.
well, one thing I learned in when I was going to school for game design, one thing I learned that's ended up being like crazy true, like past true, has been it doesn't matter what game you're making. It doesn't matter if you're making like a mobile puzzle game. It doesn't matter if you're making an open world game. It doesn't matter how intuitive it is or how new it is. The end product will always be your original idea cut in half and then cut in half again. Like if you want an idea of what your game will look like by the end of it, cut it in half and cut it in half again, and that's about what you'll get. And that's something that I heard from like multiple teachers. And it's true. I mean, it's true. Your game always ends up being like the third the size you plan it to be. Um, like you have
AAA
like
as well.
one good day.
It's the same in
What was
AAA.
that?
It's the same
Yeah.
in all across
Yeah,
all
no, it
games
is. Yeah.
worldwide. Yeah.
Well, in AAA games, they have the 90-10 rule.
The
Where
90%.
90% of the work gets done in the last 10% of the project.
It's been true on every project I've worked on professionally
Me
and
too.
for
Yeah.
fun.
Well, I've only worked on one like professionally, but yeah, it was very much true that things got done very very close to deadline. Uh, Production suddenly ramped up. No one was doing fun anymore. Suddenly it was like, oh man, we got to get all this stuff in, and no one could do fun stuff anymore, and it was all business for like a month or two, and just
Every
chugging
time.
it all in.
Every
Yeah.
fucking time.
But it almost needs to be like that because otherwise you just don't get fun stuff in games. Otherwise you just like if you're doing what you're supposed to all the times, you will get a very rigid game. You kind of have to do these little like we like to do like little game jam type things almost in Ardenfall where we're like, let's take a break from this fucking town and let's just make something. Let's make a bubble elevator or let's make a dungeon or let's make some random thing out in the forest. Let's just um yeah, so I think it needs that, but yeah, it is crazy how it always works out like that. But yeah, a lot of mistakes you can make when designing an open world. There's tons, and you just kind of have to roll with the punches and get better at not making them your next time. To what degree should players influence the game's world? As much as they can, as much as you can let them. Unless you mean like outside of the game, like how much should like people with opinions have on your game? In that way, I don't know, like minimal. Like um, but in the game, they should influence it a lot. They should influence the game worlds a lot.
Yeah, I mean that's
Well,
the
and
purpose of a game.
hopping back to our last topic that we were just talking about, like scope as well, like whatever you can afford for the players to do, right? Like, don't set up
Yeah.
some like insane reactivity that then your systems cannot support, or you're just shooting yourself in the foot there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I should have made sure that everyone else was ready to move on. My bad, guys.
Another aspect is how you do that. Um, we've kind of taken the approach in Ardenfall to not. Sometimes it doesn't take much at all to feel like you have reactivity. You don't need it to be every single time this huge reaction. So actually, someone made a comment on this on the stream saying that like and this ties into quests where like you don't have to have it. Not every quest has to have this massive reaction. And his example was if you help a farmer find his cow, he's happy. That's a reaction. If you can tie that into systems, like in Ardenfall, we have a reputation system that raises, cool. And if he sells stuff, then it becomes cheaper, cool. You know, like that's all kind of automatic.
Mhm.
But then you can throw in like the cow's there now. That's a reaction. You know, he was gone and now he's here. Maybe the farmer sells milk now. Like it's really easy to just. And how much? What is that in a technical sense? Well, if you have the system to add items, it's like one line of code. Now milk appears in his inventory. Perfect. It can be really small. It doesn't have to be these massive things. Throwing in a massive thing is cool though. Sometimes.
One mistake that I preach a lot, that I've been preaching for like the last 4 months, you can ask Blake about that, is think small, implement big. Don't think big and implement unmanageably big. You will always underthink what you are implementing. So like just make up a quest that's go get a farmer's cow. Because I guarantee you'll think of like, oh, what if you find the cow first? What if you killed the cow when you found it first? What if what if you killed the farmer and then found the cow? Does the cow still follow you and there's no one to give it back to? Like there even that tiny stupid quest has like 5 or 6 really important edge cases. So when you have this quest that's like, okay, you need to get the farmer's cow because the wife kidnapped the cow and the wife is actually a part of this crime syndicate and they're going to use the cow to make drugs out of the milk, and like when you start getting into all that, like it starts creating this like web. If you're trying to like make a game like Ardenfall where you're trying to account for as many edge cases as possible, it gets to the point where you're at like 40 or 50 edge cases that you need to like really solve for that you didn't really see coming. And yeah, not that big quests are bad. You just have to be really careful when you're planning them, and you can't plan them. You can't vibe quest them as much as you can, like a go get a farmer. You really need to use like flow charts, and you need to get secondhand opinions. Am I missing anything? Josh is good at catching things I miss. Sending flow graphs to Josh, and Josh being like, what if you kill this person? What if this happens? What if they already have that item? Is that a droppable item? Yeah, so Josh is very good at finding edge cases as a programmer.
Yeah, I think like referencing your teammates is always great because they will come up with all those things that you didn't think about.
Yeah, it's and that's why. Yeah, maybe they'll talk about this later, but watching players play Ardenfall radically changed how I make quests. If you design a quest to make a player go right, they will go left, just in spite of you, and you need to take that kind of stuff into consideration. And it's actually it's really crazy. Sorry, but I'll spin off into another tangent. Are we all ready to move on to next question?
I just want to say it reminds me of the old NES days, with the side scrollers, and there was those games where you could go back the other way that your character was not facing, and there'd be like some little hidden treasure there for you. And I think ever since then it's just ingrained that we need to go check out the other stuff before we move on.
Well, definitely before these like companies were like giant media conglomerates and they were pumping out these like giant 100 GB games like once every other year. Studios had to really be like creative of how they kept your attention until the next game, and a lot of that was like post-game content and Easter eggs and secrets and truly a simpler time, a better time.
Yeah, this is a spin-off, but it is interesting. The idea of giving products more value is something that seems to be not done anymore, probably because it's so expensive to make the base thing. Like when you think about like when you bought a DVD, what would you get? You would get the DVD, you get the movie, right? Cool. You'd also get like behind the scenes and like weird little mini games and screenshots. They basically try to pack as much as they could into the DVD to give it inherent value. Same for games. I mean, you'd have like Call of Duty. What did it have? A single player campaign in multiplayer and all this stuff, and now it's just multiplayer. It's just kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. Maybe indies should go for more for that. They probably already do. I haven't really thought about it.
I was gonna say we made like an hours long demo to our game, so I mean I feel like indies are already probably doing it more than AAA are.
Maybe indies should do it more. I wonder. Like maybe it would be that's an interesting avenue. Make your games a bit smaller, but then just add more cheap content that kind of like not cheap, but like diverse content, I suppose.
Yeah, I know that's.
We'll get Blake drunk and have him record a commentary track.
Oh, that'll be fantastic.
I mean,
Lead
Valve does
writers
that.
commentary.
Valve has
Do
their
they?
yeah. Valve pretty much
Yeah,
always
they
has
have
their
commentaries.
commentary tracks. It's great. It's actually really awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
I think Steam has that built in. I'm pretty sure Steam has like a commentary feature built in that no one on Earth uses except for Valve.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does. Like, I think they recently just added it to Half-Life 2 and all of the episodes for the anniversary.
Oh shit.
I had no idea.
I might be opening up Half-Life 2.
Yeah, I know what you're doing after this.
I mean, we've talked about having a. I mean, I really want to. I 100% am going to do this. Like, there's no question. Having a guide, like a physical game guide that you can buy. Amazon does printing. They handle it all for you, so it would be, not hard to do. Design a
Yeah,
classic game guide with like some lore and some information on all the items. Obviously, these modern games change a lot, especially indie games change a lot with like balancing over time. So it's kind of weird to have here's all the damage values for the weapons. It'll probably change, but it's the vibe more than anything else. Seems kind of cool.
Mhm.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's very, very like 2003, 2003 to 2008 vibe. The physical guidebook, going to GameStop and getting the physical guidebook for your game for like your whatever
Or
you were
just
playing
being,
at the
or
time.
before that, it comes with the game, pre 2003.
Yeah, well, yeah, I grew up in the
Long.
Midwest, so I was never like a PC gamer until I was older. But yeah, that's I guess with PC games that probably would have been more common too. Oh, but you mean like or do you mean like or do you mean like something like this?
It'd be bigger than that usually.
it's
But the games I'm thinking of.
like some of the Elder Scrolls games had like the pocket guides, and then I think the Fallout games they had like it was a user manual, but it also had a bunch of lore in it, and then it had some like suggestions on how to complete quests and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I wish I would have known how useful these were when I was a kid, because I like didn't like, and now I'm an adult and I'll read stuff and like it'll like tell you like puzzles and stuff. Like it'll like tell you like the answers to like the first puzzles in the game. They'll tell you like all the controls, all the lore in the beginning. It's crazy. It's crazy how useful they were. And I was
Mhm.
like a kid in the '90s. I was like, I'm not gonna read. I'm gonna play this on the TV, bro.
I think
Speaking
my
of that,
favorite. Sorry, go ahead.
well, I just wanted to say, like, someone was asking in the chat if the games would include anything like the Pocket Guide to the Empire,
Physically or just
which
in the game?
not too sure. They didn't specify on that.
If you're still
Uh,
there, could you specify?
Well, for Wayward Realms, one of the Kickstarter rewards we were doing is basically that call it the uh, an exploration of the archipelago, which is sort of just like a roundup of information about the kingdoms and the races and the enemies and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. I think my favorite use of them was the anti-piracy measures. Those were fun. Like I know Daggerfall had some. The second Metal Gear game had one where like you had to have the manual to get the specific codes and listen for the knocks in the game in order to enter like a specific frequency. It was really fun.
Nini no Kuni did that kind of for the DS, where it was like a little Studio Ghibli game, and the little boy was like a musician, or not a musician, a magician. Sorry, like a mage, and you had to actually like use spells out of the spell book in the game. But like the spell book was like a physical book that came with the copy of the game. So you like needed the spell book to use the spells in the game. It was pretty neat, but it was probably an anti-piracy measure, but I never really thought of it like that. I was just like, whoa,
yeah.
this is cool.
Yeah, the arms race of piracy measures throughout the years. I mean, if you go back to the beginning of games, almost pretty much. Um,
Yeah.
it's ever evolving. All of a sudden, originally you could just have like a booklet that has the answer, but then people invented photocopiers. Fuck. Okay, wheels. The wheels can't be really easily photocopied, and then yeah, it just kept going. And now, obviously, now it's more very, very purely, not completely digital, but almost completely digital. Um, yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's very
Yeah.
boring now. I think that's. It used to be like really creative,
Yeah.
and now it's pretty much almost 100% very boring. I mean, I guess like the few physical formats we have now, you could say it's kind of they designed it to be anti-piracy, but it's still kind of boring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe boring is good. I don't know.
I mean, probably when it comes to like protection and security, yeah, straightforward, boring, probably
Yeah.
pretty good.
Like Do we want to, like, you open the game and pull out your wheel? Probably not. I'd probably prefer just to have the Steam DRM do its thing, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like, will fun security even be effective? To what degree should players influence the game's world?
I think we did that one.
Okay, well, I mean, because we kind of went back,
Oh
but
yeah,
then
true.
so
I guess I can answer that. I haven't answered that yet. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same answer all the time.
yeah.
But no, I guess I did answer this. Yeah, it's just it. What matters most is how you do it.
Oh,
Um,
okay,
do
okay,
it
all
often,
right.
but you don't need to do it all the time. You don't need to do massive things. Just referencing it sometimes can help a lot.
So then, what
Yeah.
are some limitations? Oh, I'm sorry, were you gonna say something, Blake?
No, yeah, I was just gonna say that it's like it. I think the mistake that a lot of indie developers try to do as well, particularly with RPGs, is like if they're going for a more traditional RPG where the world does react to you, they try to make it react to every single thing the player does in some like major way, but even really tiny details of like I don't know, you rescue a farmer's cow and then like you come back a week later and it's like here's a free glass of milk when you walk by. It's like just really, really small things like that feel like the player's decisions matter, even if it's not really that big in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's true. Well, and then that goes back to the special snowflake rule as well.
Yeah, I
Gotta
think New
gotta give
Vegas did that well.
gotta give
Yeah,
things their space to shine. Yeah, no,
yeah,
New Vegas is like the king at that in my book, for sure. What are some limitations open world games have in terms of writing compared to other games? Like, I guess, like we were just kind of saying that you
Yeah.
don't get to be as set PC. You don't get to set up these
yeah,
perfect moments. You don't get to have you like walking through a canyon when an ogre bursts through the wall and kills your companion, and then that has some big story that spins off that your companion just died. Because yeah, in our game we wouldn't know if the ogre is going to be there. We don't know if we're even going to have a companion. We don't, we're not going to make a destructible wall there. So I mean, it limits how dramatic you're able to be more than anything, is what I would say.
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that's a good way to put it.
You can, like with anything, you can make an open world less open sometimes. There is this, there's a range. There's solutions to that. Like for example, in this kind of ends up, you can use this to fix open worlds in a lot of ways. I think open worlds are. It's funny I'm saying this, but I think open worlds are flawed in a lot of ways.
yeah,
If I could go back, I would definitely make Ardenfall more
A hub world.
like big. Potentially, there's a range of what I could do, we might have done, but like, why not make Ardenfall more like 5 smaller open worlds, and you just switch between them.
Yeah,
yeah,
I liked that. People complained about that with the Outer Worlds, but I actually didn't mind it. I thought it was and it was like because you're like in a spaceship and then you go down and you're like landing at different bays and like they're whole planets. So like it's realistic that you might have to dock at different bays. Like you're not gonna walk around the entire Earth to get to. So I liked it in the Outer Worlds, like the hub world design.
I did too.
yeah.
I
I
I
think
didn't like. I didn't really like the open worlds of their worlds, but I don't think it's because things were broken up. That isn't.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I think it's the other way around. Like, because like imagine in Ardenfall if you wanted to build a mountain. Well, now you have to add the entire walk up the mountain. Is that
yeah.
worth it? Maybe if that's
Sure.
like your game. Like Skyrim is all about mountains. Okay, fine. But if I just want to add a mountain, now I've just quadrupled the workload. If I care about the mountain, I just fucking teleport to the mountain.
Yeah.
yeah.
Are we gonna say Blake?
I think Vampire the Masquerade did that really well because it had very, very small hub worlds, but they were open. You had freedom of movement, but they were able to tell really interesting and compelling stories with it, and there was a lot of reactivity in terms of player mechanics.
Bro,
Perfect
pour
example.
one out for Vampire the
Yes,
Masquerade. Such a good game.
I love that
It's
game.
like gone
I
before its time, dude.
so good.
Like,
Yeah, I love
eh,
that. If we were to do another RPG, I don't think I will, but if we did, that I would definitely rather go that direction.
if I do another RPG, it'll be in a modern setting for sure. But yeah, no, Vampire the Masquerade did do the hub world thing really good. So yeah, I would say that yeah, you're just really limited in terms of how much control you have. You need to be aware that you're giving up a lot of control. So like I said, like don't set up something where like it's super specific stuff is supposed to happen, because it won't. Even when you set up specific stuff to happen in an open world game, that's what I learned with demo. Is there's a lot of stuff I kind of tried to force the player to see through like triggers and like, okay, they'll be here, so I'll put a huge one here and a huge one here, and they would just go this way, completely miss like all of the huge trigger. They're like, oh, what's out in the middle of this water instead of going back over this bridge? It's I don't know. It's like there's a voice in their head that's telling them all of the wrong answers. So it's yeah, just don't expect that to work, and then that's a bug because then they come back when they're not doing a quest and the trigger goes off because they have the true boolean and now they're in the trigger with the yeah, so it's you just got to be careful. You got to be really careful. Realize you don't have the control you're going to want to have. Realize you're not going to have that cinematicness that like a single player game has. Anybody have anything to add on to that?
We got
I
a
don't
we
think
got a
so.
random question. Do you like having wacky moments in your worlds? Like example, a guy falling from the sky or a cow set randomly on fire.
I love moments like that.
Yeah,
Felix actually got me in a moment like that in Editor, where we have a monster called the Agobi, and it's like an on-land hermit crab that like takes little rocks and spits bubbles at you. And we have this variation that's a windswept one where it has like a big windswept rock on its back. And I was walking around in Editor, and one of the characters was like, "Oh man, I don't know what I just taped, but I swear that rock's moving." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's a weird thing for an NPC to say." And I click out of the dialogue, and all of a sudden in the horizon, I see like a rock moving. I was like, "What the heck?" And then it was an Agovi. I didn't know we had the windswept ones at the time, so it was like legitimately like a hilarious moment for me. Um, but yeah, no, I do like wacky moments. I think my biggest complaint in Ardenfall is that there's not enough of them. I actually bring that up all the time. Is that I want like wacky overworld moments more in the game, which they will exist. They'll be there. They'll be there. But that's kind of like my biggest criticism of Ardenfall narratively right now is that I don't feel like enough like out of pocket stuff does happen. I just don't feel like enough of it does.
Yeah, I
I feel
mean,
like a lot of it is very confined to towns, and I don't like that. But sorry, go on, Vic.
well, part of it also is like what tone you're setting for your game, right? If it's like a really deep, dark, post-apocalyptic, everything's on the verge of death kind of thing, then maybe it doesn't fit as well. But it's those kind of moments, and maybe like even in those serious worlds, those kind of moments are like what kind of stand out to players when they look back on the game, and those are the memorable things, those things that came out of nowhere, like surprise you. That's what people tend to remember.
Yeah, I think the earlier Fallout games did that really well, particularly the first game, where it was a very like grim and serious game, but you'd have all these weird, hilarious things happen that were just kind of out of nowhere, like the TARDIS. Um, so it's just, it's funny things like that, or like, and especially the way they did the humor in those games, with it being kind of like, black humor, it fit the setting well. So yeah, like you said, Victor, it depends on the type of setting you're making.
yeah.
Yeah,
For
and
Ardenfall, generally the humor has been my humor, which is more dry humor, or more just subtle.
yeah, it's subtle or silly. It can be kind of silly, but not like in a childish way. I wouldn't say.
Not like
Just in like
slapstick.
yeah, just it just doesn't really take itself too seriously type of way. Like I don't.
Yeah. We don't try to
It's
Like
like
the
push the
yeah,
this is the most serious world type of thing. And our art style obviously is not mega gritty, so that fits
yeah.
together. Like if for
Exactly. Yeah,
example,
exactly. Like we can't make super gritty quests because it would just mesh with the, or it just wouldn't mesh well with the look of the world. I try to keep it clean. I try to use like only like lore cuss words, for instance. I think that the only non-lore cuss word I use is damned.
maybe
Like
shit, I
because
feel like. Do we not use shit?
no, we use gunka, which
Oh
is
yeah.
the which is the Karu word
Gunka.
for shit. Um, but yeah, I think that yeah, just and knowing the tone is super important, and what's going to mesh well with your tone is super important when it comes to
Mhm.
humor, especially because humor can really get in the way of things. It can really make or break really anything. It can really make the experience. It can be like a little shock to your system that keeps you going, or it can be really really annoying.
One thing that can help. Well, another type of humor is more like bugs, or not bugs necessarily, more like just like unpolished or just gamey. Sometimes immersion breaking actually can often be immersion breaking stuff. That is a legitimate form of humor. Like, people legitimately like Skyrim bugginess. They like it, and Fallout New Vegas too. They like it. It's which is really interesting. And that's one thing that helps with Ardenfall is that we're allowed to have more bugs. We're legitimately allowed to have more bugs. We're obviously trying to fix every one we can, but we're allowed to partially because the characters are more cartoony, and it's not like it's less immersion breaking because the whole game is not immersion building because of the fidelity.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
not immersed because you can see the character in front of you sweat and blink and wipe every follicle of hair. Yeah,
Yeah, like a buggy
Yeah,
animation or maybe there's a snap is a little big deal, not a big deal when the character is not acting realistically anyways.
I think I saw somebody put it like this way before, but it adds sort of like a level of campiness to it, and
Yeah.
just kind of like how people really enjoy those campy Class B movies, right? Like there's just a certain charm to it that it's endearing.
Me and Josh have had several conversations of how we missed when games looked and felt like games. like how we just miss when a video game looked like a video game, not like a 3D movie, not like the news or real life, but just like a game. And it played like a game. Like, there'd be points or a story or there'd be a person you were versing. And like, I like open world games. Obviously, Fallout New Vegas is one of my games, but it's like
Really?
the open world, it like infected everything. It's like if they made Tetris in 2025, it would have to be fucking open world Tetris, where you have to bring the blocks to different towns and stack them. Like, it's just like they find like the new Mario Kart is open world. Who the fuck asked for that? Find me one post of someone saying, "Hey, when's the open world Mario game coming?" Find me that person, and I will concede. But I never saw them. I don't like. Not everything needs to be open world. And I miss a world where not everything was.
Well, it's kind of destroying genres in a way too. Like the new Street Fighter game has an open world mode. I don't know why you would need that in a fighting game. Why?
And it's the most expensive part,
Like,
guaranteed.
yeah. Like if you want an open world fighting game, go play an open world fighting game that was built to be an open world fighting game, like Sleeping Dogs, or I guess Sifu's kind of open world. It's like hubs.
Yeah, I think
Sleeping
one example you should give on this topic is, well, this always leads back to abstraction. The more you can abstract away, generally the better. And obviously there's no such thing as rules in games, but the more abstract you can go, the more you can do with the same amount of money and time. An example
Yep.
would be in Minecraft when you have a breeding mechanic for cows. It's very abstract. Cows don't have a gender; they're just cows. You can get milk from both of them, any cow, whatever, and you get a piece of meat or wheat. You're not giving them beef. You're not giving them meat. You're getting wheat. Give one to one cow. It starts having heart icons appearing. Walk up to another cow, give it wheat, and they bump into each other, and all of a sudden a little baby appears, and you get XP. Imagine doing that, but in Red Dead Redemption 2. Like imagine how much tech you would need to build to, and then ask the question, would it even be fun? Because well, it can't be instant, right? You have to have two different genders. You'd have to, giving them wheat doesn't make any fucking sense. So would you even be able to make them breed? How would that even work? You can't even do that feature in Red Dead 2 because of the realism. And that's why abstract systems are great. And that's why Project Zomboid is more deep than 7 Days to Die, because it's top down and it inherently allows for more abstract systems.
Both absolutely magnificent zombie games.
Yes, they're both amazing. I love them both to death, but different in terms
I
of
didn't
abstract.
played 7 Days.
They're really good. Both
I didn't-
7 Days is great.
I never knew you played that. I know I play 7 Days. Maybe we'll have to do that sometimes. But anyone have anything else to add to limitations in the open world? Or should we? Or I guess we kind of spun off of that. Do we have any more questions, or should we go on to 9?
Yeah, let's move on.
How to use open worlds to enhance your storytelling? I mean,
Kind of a
feel like-
loaded question.
yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I think the biggest strength that an open world has as far as storytelling would be emergent storytelling. and where it's like this unique thing that happened to you because all the systems that you have sort of came together in this one way, and you know, something crazy happened, and it's so memorable, and that's just going to stick with you, and it's going to be different from what other people experienced. And I think that's, to me, that's like the biggest strength as far as those storytellings, those unique moments that you can get because of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's.
I think
Go ahead.
like mechanics, particularly in open world games, if done right, can act as storytelling devices on their own. Like to use an example from Wayward Realms, we want to have a parkour system for like very dense cities. So like a player could pick, I want to do climbing, but I want to do parkour as well, and mix it with a stealth build. And you've got like the player has their own internal narrative of like why they're picking these two things and what they intend to do with them.
So like yeah, it's like you're saying like you can give them more tools, or are you?
Yeah. Give players the tools to tell their own stories, even if they're not,
Yeah,
like
that's
coming up
true.
with a backstory. It's like in the moment, like moment to moment gameplay can in itself be a story.
I think that yeah, I think the biggest advantage you have is just like more space to tell your story.
Yeah,
More yeah, more space to tell, and more yeah, just what Victor said is honestly the right answer. It allows for stuff to happen. You can do the same stuff you can in a linear game, but you can account for certain things to get screwed up systematically, and that can be fun.
yeah,
Um, yeah, emergent storytelling would definitely probably be the biggest advantage, is that you can set up systems that can create these moments for you, like in a way they can't in a linear game or in a condensed setting.
Now, my take is based on my hot take that open worlds kind of suck. Um, Pure open worlds.
After 7 years
You,
of building one, you
after
get
seven
kind of
years of
bitter.
building one, I'm pretty confident of that. Um, there isn't any inherent to massive open worlds. You can have, but you know, you get some from open worlds. The best example is the one Vic was talking about. Um, but of course, you can do that in a non-open world. Perfect example would be like Baldur's Gate 3, where that kind of stuff always happens all the time. Um, and even though it's not an open world at all, it almost feels like one because it has like the benefits of being open world without actually being an open world at all. Um, so that's my
It's a really good
my hot
point.
take is you can't, but with the elements of open world that you could take, open world or not open world, um, yeah, definitely the everything connected together, definitely the reactions over a large period of time. Another one, I guess, is giving the idea that you don't have to do every quest. I think oftentimes in more linear games, um, there can be more of a feeling that of an expectation that you do everything. But when you have a game
Uh,
that's infinitely massive, one benefit is that players get less of that feeling. I have to do every quest to go to every location. It's so big you can't, you know that, and that clicks something in their mind. I think that helps, where it's like, okay, it's okay that this quest got blocked because of the decision I made. It's fine. There's so much more content. It's fine. So that's kind of nice.
yeah,
Yeah, so you're right though. There are very few inherent strengths. There's just things that you can do in other games that you can do differently now. Like I was gonna bring up like backtracking, but like no, the Resident Evil games and Outer Worlds and even Kingdom Hearts and Kingdom Hearts 1, there's like a second go around of every level. Like after you get to like a certain point of the game, you can like re-go to all the levels and there's like a new little story, it's like a new harder boss battle. So I guess like not even like backtracking, which would be like kind of like an obvious one. So yeah, there's not a lot of inherence to building an open world. It's just kind of interesting from a UX point of view, I think. I think that an open world is much more a UX thing than it is. I think that players need it more than game designers need it.
I guess one
yeah,
aspect, one kind of asterisk to that would be simulation, which is obviously Wayward Realms is very much in that realm.
Yeah,
Same for Daggerfall, where it's it's a simulation, and
yeah.
that can simulations benefit from being large. So there's
Mhm.
that.
Because
yeah.
large is realistic and simulations benefit
But
from being
also just
realistic. So yeah, that's true.
yeah, and I guess when you have proc gen, you can fuck it, make it too big. Who cares?
We're gonna
Yeah,
put that
because
on the box.
do you use unreliable narration? If so, how do you handle canon in your world? All right. I
Blake, you
feel
want
like
to hit this one up for
I
us?
was gonna say I feel like Blake and Victor are big on this one.
Yeah, so I feel like depends on the type of game you're making. If you're making a game that's kind of like, as wide as a puddle, as deep as an ocean, you don't necessarily have to worry too much about canon if you're just trying to tell really interesting stories. But if you're trying to go for a good middle ground, kind of like Wayward Realms, for instance, a really good example is like if you want to use unreliable narration, provide the player with alternate points of view they can discover and determine what it is on their own. But you don't have to outright say what canon is. The developers may know what it is, but don't outright tell the player. Just give them multiple points of view for them to try to determine what they think is the correct canon.
Yeah, one thing we really strive for is like having our own internal truth to everything, right? And that's basically what goes in our wiki, and then we can have like the different ways that society sees it or interprets it or whatever, right? But it's important for us to know like how exactly this work. Again, going back to the whole sticking to the rule set that you've established for your world. It's good to know that for us, that's not something we really plan to share at all with with the players, right? They'll get to see things through the lens of that of person existing in that world, as opposed
Yeah,
to us who are outside of it.
kind
Yeah,
of I guess oh, sorry.
you go. You go.
I guess a real world parallel of that is if you look at old historical documentation and records of battle, if you look at one from one side and one from the other side, you'll almost always see aspects that differ greatly, but there's almost always a certain middle ground where they commonly agree on specific events that happen, which is your best bet of finding out what actually happened. And then from there, it's up to your own interpretation.
Yeah, yeah. So in Ardenfall, we obviously have as well nar unreliable narrator, which ends up being meaning that the only way players get information is through unreliable narrator. Either an NPC talks about it, or they find a book, um, other than more meta means. So there's loading screen messages. Technically, unless it's like, you know, says it's written by someone or like framed as being written by someone, that's canon. If I'm telling if it is a message that says Ardenfall is an island of da da da, that is now canon. It's a weird form of canon, which I kind of recently realized. Like, oh shit, okay, I need to be careful with that. I don't want to say anything
Very good point.
that could mean
Yeah,
anything. And same for being really meta, like what do you put on the back of the box? Because is that canon? Yes, unless you're labeling it as, to me, yeah, the answer is yes, unless you're framing it as like, no, this is like a quote from an NPC. Otherwise, you're canonizing it.
Anything that the creator has touched will be canon. I was just watching a bunch of people talk about how in Dragon Ball Z, Cell has hair because Akira Toriyama like drew Cell with hair once on a napkin, basically. Like, and they have like these like terrible low quality fixed pictures of like, I'm like, okay, I think that he was just being a concept artist and concepting ideas for this new villain.
Yeah.
But sure. So, but yeah, no, it's people get carried away is all I'm saying. Um, it canon is important to people. People argue
In real
over it
life
a
too.
lot.
That's what
Yeah,
people argue about 24/7 in real life. People want truth. Um, but
yeah.
I think one aspect with Ardenfall and with a lot of worlds is, yeah, you'll never get it. We also have like, you know, canon, but it's, yeah, you will never get the canon of Ardenfall. Um, sorry. And you're not supposed to. That's no fun. Like,
Join the
no
dev
point.
team.
Yeah, sure.
That's the one way, I guess. Yeah. We're
Uh,
hiring. No. Yeah, but it's really fun, honestly, Unreal Narrator. We don't utilize it as much as we should with like stories and like a battle, like telling a battle. But yeah, it's great.
I think that there's a lot with Ardenfall that's being done in layers. Like I said, I feel like we really are trying to focus on just getting a functionable base level game. And we take these rare dips into like really fun things to keep us going as devs. But I feel like once the base game is out, I feel like there's going to be a lot more to come after that. I feel like once we have kind of like this full circle, we will start adorning the circle with things inside of it. So yeah, I feel like that's one thing that's going to come is more books and more stories and more unreliable narration and just more opinions, I guess. Yeah, more in-game opinions and opportunities.
Yeah, one of my favorite comments that I've seen on some of our marketing is people have said one of our example stories or one of our example quests that we'll use in marketing, kind of purposefully spoiling it just because of marketing, is you can either repair this lighthouse or destroy it, and here's what happens. And it's been really funny seeing people say like, this is a bad story because there's a really obvious good answer. And what's funny is people have said that about both sides, which tells me that we did it right.
That it's, yeah.
Where it feeds into people's beliefs so well they don't even realize it's doing that, and they just see it as, well, this is the moral choice. But I've seen both sides. People have differing opinions on that, so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
That's great.
It's true. I also, yeah,
shout out to Chris for helping on that one.
Yeah, Chris did. Chris watched me play that quest, and he was the one that was like, don't do it this way. Do it this way. The choice needs to be more apparent. And so I rebuilt the entire quest. The actual game file for that quest is called Beneath the Beacon's Glow 2, because I started a completely new file and rebuilt it from the ground up. Yeah, well, I mean, when Chris Avalon gives you advice, you don't say, that's too hard. You say, yes, sir, please, can I have more? Let me go do that right now, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, so we got another question. How does your work on entirely different game genres carry over onto new projects? And then I guess this one's targeted at me, but any design philosophies from Guns Up versus Ardenfall. Guns Up is a game I worked on professionally. But we can all answer this. I mean, working on any game ever will make you a better game designer. It doesn't matter the genre.
Widens your tool set.
And just doing games equals you're getting better at games. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's the same. It's like, practicing music of any kind will make you a better musician. Obviously, completely different design philosophies on different games, but that can help. That like I've been working on a project at work, and it completely different game, but I brought ideas from that in terms of game design and in terms of how you even run a team or blah 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 into Ardenfall. So even games that are completely different can teach you new things. And working with different teams as well, huge thing. Everyone works differently, and different people on a team can teach you new things that you would have never learned.
I think I really like you can expand it to even working outside the industry as well. There's always like different skills and things that you pick up at any place that you're working that you can apply later. Like I've worked in retail before, and that helps when having to talk with people online. There's
Karens online.
It's always a joy.
The purists. Yeah, they have big opinions. And you do handle yourself well, Vic. That's why I just stay out of it. I just.
Well, it's usually easier to deal with an angry person online than there is to deal with an angry person like right up in your face.
I've always been lucky on on projects to have good people, because Josh is also like immensely good at that. It's like somebody could be like, your game fucking sucks, and Josh will just comment, why do you think it sucks? Like Josh will be like, Josh should just like, this is an opportunity, let's get to the bottom of this. What do you hate about it? And I'm just like, I've worked really hard on this. But yeah, no, I'm a very emotional person. But it's always nice to have someone like you and Josh to not be emotional for me. I think one of the biggest things when you're doing anything, like when you're practicing an instrument cross genre, or if you're working on different genres of games, is just to, and this is actually something Josh again helped me with a lot, is just viewing your skill as a thing that needs tools, and everything you're learning pertaining to that overarching skill, whether it's programming or guitar or game making, game design, everything you're learning is now like a tool that you can use in your future endeavors. Like you said, there's a lot of project management tools that you got out of your project at work. Ardenfall's given me a lot of tools of setting limitations. When I first started Ardenfall, I didn't set myself limitations, and it was terrible. Everything went wrong, and Josh pretty much called it out to begin with, every time, and that's how I knew I was doing something wrong, because it wasn't some like disaster. Josh was calling it like a shot in pool every time. He was like, okay, but if you do this, I really feel like this is going to happen, and there's going to be too many global variables, and they're all going to start getting, and then it's just, I feel like you're not going to be able to actually like manage it and get bugs out of it. And then I'd spend like 2 months trying, and I'd be like, man, he's right. So yeah, that was a big tool I got out of Ardenfall, was limitations, and it's a big tool. You can ask Blake. It's a big tool I brought over to Wayward Realms when I was designing quests.
Yeah.
Is limitations are important. If you try to design these epics, they're not going to make it an engine, and you're going to be really sad. You have to design something reasonable that you can get in, and then once you know you can get that in, then you can take the next step until you kind of hit your wall. And it just has to do with experience too. You get experience with how long things take. I think that's a big part of experience in game development, is just learning how long things take and how much time you have, and is it worth it. I'm still not very good at that part. I'm like immune to being good at that part.
That is people.
You got to find the thing that'll have the most impact for the amount of time you pour into it, really.
I mean, the standard is, I mean, this is kind of more of a joke for engineers, but I think it applies to everyone. Whenever an engineer says it'll take a long time, then it will take, then they just don't want to do it. But then if they say it'll take a quick time, then it will take 2x longer than they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No matter what, like, it doesn't matter if they're like really good and they're like given extra time. No, it's still going to take 2x. One of the reasons why I think is it's a not philosophical, whatever the other one, philosophy. No, whatever. It's psychological. There we go. Got it. You give, if I say it's going to take a week, I mentally do things differently than if I said it will take 2. I will pace myself differently, and since human beings are inherently bad at that, 100% of the time it's going to go wrong every time. So sometimes the amount of time doesn't matter. It's what the time they think they have.
Yeah, I'm about 4/5 done with the quest I was supposed to be finished with last Sunday. So yeah, I know all about that. It's yeah, and it's when I feel like when you plan things out in your head, you kind of plan out in perfect scenarios. I'm not planning my 1.5-year-old to come pound on my door and scream for me because he wants to, show me something he's doing with the hose outside for 20 minutes. I don't plan that in when I'm planning how long something's gonna take me to. I don't anticipate that my wife's gonna want me to go to the zoo with them really bad on a Thursday in the middle of my workday. So yeah, it's real life happens too. Real life happens, and like you said, you're gonna pace yourself differently, and you're not gonna be prepared for those mistakes. Yeah, it just always happens, and that goes back to the game college thing of cutting your game in half and then cutting it half again, and that's normally what you get. I know that Morrowind was supposed to be like way bigger than it ended up being.
Like
Yeah, I think
10x.
it was like supposed to have been like the scale of Daggerfall, but in the same engine. I think they de-scoped it significantly so that it would run on the Xbox.
Also, probably due to time. 'Cause
That too.
it would have been
Yeah.
until like 2020 if they. Well, yeah, what we built, is what we have now.
Yeah. There's a lot of things to take out of Bethesda's book with Morrowind that I wanted. Like they shamelessly reuse assets in Morrowind, and it's pretty awesome. They like there are so many like you got one fishing village hunt, boom, dude, we've got 20 fishing villages around.
Yeah.
Like it's it is, but it works. It works because you're not like there to see the different huts. You're just there to like be like, okay, is this a shop? Okay, is this guy okay? Quarma mines. Can I? Oh, he's part of this group. Cool. Yeah. So there's a lot of pride swallowing that goes into making a good game too. There's like a lot of like, I want everything to be unique, but I'm making the game less fun because I have that want. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna start rambling if I go down that hole. So, but yeah, anyway.
Yeah,
Do we
in
want to move on?
hindsight, oh, one last
No,
comment.
no, no. Go on.
Um,
You go.
one thing that I would have done differently for Ardenfall is definitely, I think it might have been it must have been a pride thing. I think it must have been. Handcrafted, everything handcrafted.
Yeah,
Which is a terrible, don't do that. Like building an open world, you need proc gen tools. And I don't mean proc gen an entire city, or really not even necessarily anything to do with anything important other than like a tool that says, okay, here's this area, make it so it's bumpy and add some trees and grass, and then we can go in and paint it up and make it look good. Because there's just so much time wasted with that.
yeah. And in
And
Ardenfall, if there's a hill, it's because Felix or Toshi raised the terrain. If
yeah,
there's a tree, it's because Felix or Toshi put it there. Yeah, there's nothing. There's almost nothing in Ardenfall that was placed there by a computer, and that was terribly inefficient.
yep, very bad idea.
We were kids, man. We were kids.
College students, they're stupid.
Yeah. It's when I started Ardenfall, I was 26. I was in college. I had no degree, no wife, no kid.
I was
Now I'm
19.
now I'm 30. I have a wife. I have a kid, another on the way. I have a degree. It's just weird. It's weird how much life has changed instead. It's weird how long I. It's not weird how much life has changed. It's weird how much Ardenfall has gone on. It's crazy. I'm really excited for the end of the year to get it in the hands of players and get people playing it finally.
Any other questions?
Tips. Oh yeah. Any other questions from like the peoples?
No. I think we're good.
Okay. Tips on getting started as a world builder and favorite piece of lore you've created.
I have a bunch of tips.
Take it away.
The
Yeah.
first one is this is really important. What kind of stories do you as a writer want to tell? That one's extremely important. If you're building a world for someone else and you have absolutely no interest in telling stories in that world, I'm sorry, but you shouldn't be working on it. Because like it's writing is a very human process. You have to be emotionally invested in what you're doing in order to put good work into it. Josh Sawyer would disagree with me on that, but I will fight him. He has like zero emotional attachment to anything he works on. It's crazy. Um, the second is what do you personally find interesting? And then if it's the last one is if this is for a video game or a tabletop game, what kind of systems can you use in that world? Because the type of systems that you can use within the confines of that world is going to determine how limited or how complex it is.
And your
Yeah.
favorite piece of lore?
My favorite piece of lore that I've created. Oh shit. Uh,
None. It's all terrible.
Yeah, it's all pretty bad. Like typical like Dunning-Kruger writer, I suck at everything. Um, we did a lore post on it a couple weeks ago. Crap, what was it? I think it's called like the Blood Harvest or something. That's probably up there in like top five for me. Like obviously there's like 90% of it is like not in the public eye, but still.
Someday.
So yeah, someday.
Who wants to go next?
I volunteer, Victor.
Sure. I don't really know if I have that many good tips, at least nothing else that Blake already covered. It's really just determining what kind of story you want to tell with the world, right? Like whatever your goal is with that, because we all have goals to our world building, right? It's not whether it be like I want to create something that's very realistic and very grounded or something like that, or if I just want to really ignite people's imaginations, things like that. You just gotta figure out what kind of setting you're wanting to do, and then really just kind of focus in on those avenues that take you there. It's it's a pretty general piece of advice, but I think that's really it. Just kind of figure out what your basis is. And I guess as far as my favorite piece of lore, I would say either Marathweir or the Jungarian Horseman.
Rothweir, dude.
Yeah, which both have like had other people toss in their ideas as well. Like it's really hard to create just things in a bubble by yourself in a
Mirathweir
team
is
that
what we
has worked
got
like ours.
hyped when I first joined the project.
Yeah,
Mirathweir got me like, like I was ready to go lift some weights. I was so hyped. It was such
yeah.
like
Coming up with that one was a lot of fun because we had a region already. It was called Walford, which is a terrible fucking name.
That's going back in the game somewhere.
And I had done this social media post asking people like, what kind of environments do you like to see in games? And the number 2 spot that came in was deserts. And so we were kind of just discussing this back and forth and saying like, is there any place to put a desert in the archipelago? Because it's more of like, Western Europe kind of setting. So, and the idea came to me, which was actually some that was inspired by Mad Max, where like, the oceans dried up and it's now just a desert. And I was like, well, what if we do that somehow? Like maybe we raise a chunk of ocean floor up out of the water. And so that's where we just kind of like kept rolling with that and seeing all the what crazy things could we do with it? How did this come about? And so yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite ones that we've done.
And do you want to just like give an overview of what it is?
Yeah,
well, you kind of implied it.
Yeah, it's a island that's actually was formerly underwater. It has like mountains, which used to be the islands that were there in that region. And so it's just a really horrible wasteland full of stuff that wants to kill you because it's all like ocean life that's adapted to now living on the surface in this inhospitable place. And you've got like the dead coral reefs and whale bones and giant fossilized seashells that are strewn all about the place. So yeah, it's a horrible place that's going to be a lot of fun.
Funny,
one little known fact about
has a version of that, except for it's not dead. It's funny. It's like the opposite, where it's like the starting region is a part of Ardenfall that used to be underwater, 1,000 years ago. But it's full of living coral and like seaweed that's now flowing in the wind and stuff like that. So it's,
wind kelp or something what do we call it again?
I don't remember. Something like that.
Yeah, it's I one little known fact about Victor is that he is H.P. Lovecraft incarnate. He writes the most beautiful Lovecraftian writing. It's very, very spooky and very, very elegant. Very, very Lovecraft. I really like your short stories and stuff.
One of those is what got me on the team as a writer, actually, because we submitted some stories to Ted, and that's one that I submitted a H.P. Lovecrafty story about some sailor who encountered crabmen out on the ocean, and then he's gone kind of mad, and he's telling the story back to.
Didn't you also write one about like 2 guys like down in a pit that like fell down there, or something? Who didn't someone write one? Was that you or?
Jakob was the one who had the idea of having these 2 guys, and one winds up eating the other.
Yeah,
spoilers, I guess.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that story was fucking nuts, dude.
Yeah,
it was well written. It was really, I mean, it's just really good. It's like really good writing, and it's like really good storytelling. I don't know, yeah, very, very, very Lovecrafty, very good horror writing. I
also have one that I called the color out of place. Obvious reference right there. We have a joke on the Discord about an orgy story, which is that one. It's not the feature of it, but it's part of the story. But it's also deals with like Lovecraftian monsters kind of thing.
Good combo.
Sounds very hentai. Yeah, I was just gonna say. sounds very
not
hentai.
tentacly. No tentacles in that story.
Okay, when you put porn and Lovecraft in the same thing, I'm gonna think tentacles.
It's the natural place to be.
I think that my tip for world building would be to, I mean, it's not like a rule. Like I wouldn't call it like a hard rule, just like a soft rule. Like if it works for you, it works for you type thing. Is it always helps me to tie it back to something that means something to me. I grew up in Minnesota, so I really, really like working on level design that involves like lakes or like pieces of water. I really enjoy world building in places that involve like winter or like Arctic conditions. I really enjoy writing like fishing communities and small communities, because it ties back to like, yeah, my childhood and stuff. So I mean, making it mean something to you always helps. Making the different facets of the world mean something to you. I know that for Ardenfall with Josh, a lot of people just I think it was make it look like Morrowind, but that wasn't really. It was more the base of it was more, let's have a fantasy world that doesn't look like Great Britain. Was more Josh's big thing when open world, and that meant a lot to him to have a that was more alien and more Eastern. So yeah, just having it mean something, and Josh is super into Eastern culture outside of, so it does mean a lot to him. So yeah, just having your level design in some way lead back to kind of like you and who you are, so it's not just this huge conglomerate of cool ideas, I guess. If they mean something to you, they'll have some sort of special cohesion that makes sense.
There's always that saying, "Write what you know."
Yeah, exactly. Very much so. Yeah, it comes through in classic literature a lot, definitely. And you're like reading like Ernest Hemingway, and you're like, "Fuck, this dude saw this, didn't he?" But yeah, sorry.
That dude saw some wild shit.
Yeah, there's like a point. I think it's like Brothers in Arms or Who the Bell Tolls, where there's like a part where this dude's like talking about how he's picking like burning pieces of shrapnel out of his arm and like the feeling that it leaves over. Bro, you went through that, didn't you? Like that's not. But like, and then I think my favorite piece of lore that I've made up has probably been.
You got to do one for Ardenfall and one for Wayward Realms.
On Wayward Realms, I liked the Shrouded Shores that I wrote for Iridon. I think it was Iridon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the blind pigs, and it had like the misty shores and the misty seas, and then for Ardenfall, I'm still trying to get it in, but I wrote a drug called Pathmaker that I really like. I wrote like an ayahuasca-like drug for Ardenfall called Pathmaker, and I'd almost like it to be a drug that does kind of like what clairvoyance does in Skyrim or something. But yeah, I like, or I guess I also like, I little stuff. I'm not like a big ideas person. I'm much more of like a fill in the blanks little ideas person. I like making a lot of lore for like rogues and stuff. Like I like making a lot of like tools and lore that like thieves use and stuff. Like I have a lore item called Thieves Spice, where it's like this special type of mint they grow. It's like a mint and something else ground up, some coarse mineral and mint, and they throw it in people's eyes to get away because the mint burns their eyes. It makes
refreshing as well.
Yes, yeah, and it also leaves them with a minty freshness.
Is it like a dry mojito?
Yes, it's very much like a dry mojito. So yeah, no, I'm much more. I'm dude. I'm much more like an implementer, and that's something I was like. I was hired on to Wayward Realms as a writer, where I was almost useless. And I was just like, guys, I'm a narrative designer. I swear to God, I swear to God, once we're making quests, I swear you'll see. And yeah, I'm much more of like how do I take this lore in this world building and put it into a game? How do I make it interactable in a digital format than I am like? And that's not to say I don't like telling cool stories, but yeah, I'm much more interested in what the player is going to experience and how I can communicate that to the player.
Yeah, you definitely need both. So
yeah, narrative design and writing are definitely different. It's more apparent when you start doing it. But yeah, trying to make designers writers and writers designers just doesn't work. In my IMO, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, so a lot of the tips were already taken. We tore a lot of tips throughout this whole thing, honestly. I guess one tip that works for me because of who I am, I guess I'm kind of analytical. So that's how I approach world building, where it's a question of like, what am I building? It's kind of an obvious thing, but like it should matter. What are you building? Why are you building it? Which is kind of goes back to what we were saying a lot of. You probably shouldn't spend most of your time writing lore that's not important.
But I would say also let things domino naturally when you're writing an open world. Like I said, I want to write an open world snow, so that's going to impact how they hunt and what they wear and their architecture. And if maybe there's flaws in that architecture, but it's warm. And that's the other thing. Don't make everything perfect. Make sure there's
Oh, yeah.
flaws, because flaws are a huge avenue to hugely interesting events and things. I just feel like everyone, when they're writing, a big hurdle is everybody wants everyone to know how smart they are and how good they are at history, or how savvy they are at economics, and how good of a fantasy economic system they'd make, or whatever. Um, when the real point of it is not. It's just to make a living, breathing world, and in a living, breathing world, there are mistakes. Not everything is accounted for. Um, if you missed something in your world building, before you immediately go fix it and make it perfect, try to see if there's some way that it's a realistic mistake. Like, you missed it, could they have missed it? Could you use this to your advantage in a story? um yeah, you can come to some really neat outcomes by letting imperfections into the world building.
Yeah, I actually have something to add to this. It's probably just going to be like me regurgitating what you just said, but there was a line in one of the Matrix films where they said that one iteration of the Matrix was perfect, but everybody kept killing themselves because there was no conflict. So if you design a world that's perfect, people are going to kind of catch on to that, and it's not going to feel as real as a world that has mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could ramble about this all day, Jared. You know my rant about people expecting characters to act realistically,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
worlds to act realistically. Like, oh, it doesn't make any sense that this character in this movie didn't do this. It's like, have you never made a mistake before? Like human beings, I mean, there is such thing as just bad writing, right? Like okay, yeah, this is you could call a movie bad
Like, you
writing,
don't want
but
horror movie characters.
no, right. But
You don't want to be, oh my god, I forgot how to open a
yeah,
doorknob, or
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. But like to pick apart every detail of a person, be like, this doesn't make sense, this makes sense. Therefore, it's bad writing. It is an antithesis to writing. Like it's just it goes against what writing's all about. You do need these conflict. The whole point. Flawed characters, right? Like if you had perfect characters, you have no conflict, you have no story. Um, the key is to be able to break them apart and analyze them internally, and then use those flaws. A perfect example, pulling out of my ass, Breaking Bad, where originally the pitch, it sounds like the pitch was not that deep. The lead writer of Breaking Bad would constantly say, I forget the exact pitch, but it was basically like, this is really basic pitch. It's like, what if this guy who was really nice would turn out evil? Um,
Yeah, he said he wanted to take like a really good main character and see how much he could just like
Oh
fuck with
yeah,
him.
yeah,
what
I
was it?
remember
Yeah.
his example. It
Scarface?
was it was
Was it?
Tony Soprano from The Sopranos.
Yes. He wanted to take like Ned Flanders and make him Scarface
There
or
we go.
Tony Soprano or
Yeah, something
something.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And which is a great pitch. But what you can see as the story went on is that things got fleshed out way more, and you
Yeah.
actually saw you at first it really felt like
Think
the
small, implement
writers,
big.
yeah, the writers I don't think really knew what they were playing with yet, but as they developed it, as they had the time, they really started opening up this character and really seeing what would happen and how this character actually ticks, and it made it more and more interesting as it went on. And it's because they had a good foundation and flaws, but they were open to not like fixing the flaws, but actually playing with it. So,
Yeah.
and then for random like lore that I like, um, I guess I'll cheat and I have two. One that's outside of Ardenfall, one that's in. Favorite lore outside of Ardenfall is the Mother Flower, which is this basically massive flower in a region that is desert, and the Empire that's taken over Ardenfall uses this flower for water. So they found a special technique to collect water, but they use it for a lot of other things. Their whole religion's centered around it, um, and they have these. The plant has these giant vines, and they build cities across the entire vines because the water. It's basically a giant water transporter. Um, it's very fun, and it's very fun to flesh that out. And I wish it was in Ardenfall, but it's not. But we're planning on ways to bring this lore into Ardenfall, which will be fun. Then in Ardenfall, favorite lore, we're not. It it's my favorite because it's not just lore. It's more like a cool thing that ended up being a mechanic. Um, in the southern coast, which is the region that used to be underwater, there's basically volcanic activity in a way that creates these bubbles. In the video that's playing, people can probably see the bubbles every once in a while. It creates this weather sometimes. It gets things all kind of sticky. And sometimes it just kind of pressure builds up under Earth and it just bursts. And it will lift entire chunks of the ground into the sky and creates floating islands. So there's floating islands held by bubbles, which is fun because we've always wanted floating islands, and originally the idea was like, it's magic, which is fine, but it's much cooler that like no, this is like a regional thing. This happens. Yeah, very fun.
Yeah, it'd be cool to design some little like hardened bubble things on the bottom of the islands.
Yeah, they could be hard. Right now they're just bubbles, but yeah, they could be different. No reason they can't be.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's yeah, the floating islands have been a fun idea.
It works really
They
well
can
with just the movement system in Ardenfall, levitation. I mean, that's been a big one. I think someone in the comments asked, "Is there levitation?" Yes, that is like the most
Yes.
popular thing in Ardenfall is the levitation.
Do we? But we don't have a levitation like spell slate, do we? Isn't
We
it
do.
just
It's not in the
scrolls
demo.
and okay.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah. And that's let us kind of flesh out other systems like speed boost or mega jump. You know, we have a bunch of different potions and effects that you can use to get around the world, which has been really fun. Hoping to flesh that out even more someday. It's also made level design a pain in the fucking ass because the player can be literally anywhere in 3D space. Usually it's just 2D space. You know, they're going to be on the ground somewhere. Okay. But now what? Fuck you. You can go anywhere.
Yeah, now we have to consider levitation for like everything.
Everything. Every dungeon. Everything. Which is part of the fun, but, you know, it anything like that will inevitably cause less dungeons. You know, we have X amount of time, and if we're spending a certain amount of time making it work for levitation, that that means less dungeons. But I think it's worth it.
Yeah. People like screwing around with levitation so much.
Oh yeah, it's something people don't have. Like most games don't have that. Just because
Mhm.
modern, I mean, I know why. I know why they don't. There's very good reasons to not have levitation. But
Yeah, we've got a levitation, but it's a hover, not a flight or whatever.
that's smart. Limitations. You know, you need limitations, and if that's a limitation you have, that's fantastic. That's very smart.
I had a perk kind of like that I pitched called ejector seat, where when your health
Yeah.
fell below like 10%, you would just start uncontrollably hovering up into the air for like 5 seconds, so you could get away from the bad guys, but you could just go up. So you just had to figure it out from there.
I love that.
But yeah, no, hover. That's a little easier. It's a little easier than like actual flight. And then we have the jump potions in Ardenfall now, like the obvious inspiration from the Akirian flight potions. Is that what they're called?
It was that was a more of a level. No, it was it was a spell, but it was a basically jump spell.
I have to
Make a
take
jump.
this 1 second.
Yeah. Well, I think this is pretty much it. I think that's all the questions.
Yeah, I think we went through all of them.
I think so.
There was one where someone asked if Wayward Realms would have climbing. Yes, it has climbing.
How does it work? Is it like animation?
Actually, so I designed the system. So, yeah, so it's not animated. It's like Daggerfall where you have manual control over it. Only I added a lot of limitations to it where like you can only climb specific surface types at specific angles. So like if it's a smooth marble surface that's completely vertical, you can't climb on that. But if it's slanting quite a bit, you can kind of like hike your way up it. And then my favorite part was I don't know what I took inspiration from for this, but there's certain areas you might not be able to access during months outside of winter, and then when winter happens, ice freezes over cliff surfaces, and you can climb certain surfaces that are normally impossible to climb without something like an ice pick. so you can
And then,
access
of
areas.
course, like
Yeah.
your skills also help you, with different surfaces and angles and stuff as well.
Can I
Yeah.
mega boost my? Maybe this is a bad question to ask, but can I mega boost my stats to climb up marble?
Uh, no, but there's one of our races has like claws for feet, cambions. So I think I put that in there as the only exception to the rule is if you were playing as that specific race, that is an advantage you have.
Is that you can like stab your claws into
That's
like
cool.
harder surfaces to climb.
Yeah, and you can climb on ceilings and stuff too, technology permitting.
Yeah, technology for that's cool design.
Is your game
Um,
first person, third person, or just first person?
Both.
Okay.
Its primary emphasis is on first person, especially for early access, but eventually we'll get around to third person.
That's
You
another
treat it more
limitation.
of like an accessibility kind of
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
feature.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
another limitation that I wish we had taken is just fuck third person for our game. Um, yeah, there's definitely accessibility. Some people literally cannot play first person games, so that sucks.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
man, does it add a lot. Like climbing, for example, like no animations. They're just gonna like if that works for you, then great. But a lot of people might complain about that. So then that
well, and
kind of thing I think it,
I feel like when I played Skyrim and Fallout and I played first person and it was kind of like an experience, I was like, well, that's okay because like this is just kind of a neat little thing that I can do, you know. Like it's, but like I feel like no one has that expectation anymore these days. Everyone plays the third person mode, and they're like, "Why is it not like Dark Souls? Why did you not? Why did you not make third person combat like Dark Souls?" And it's like, well, because
It's
that would be programming a new game within our game.
On the other hand, a surprising number of games in our niche are only first person. Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
the one Avowed, first person. Um, I guess Tainted Grail is not. Does it have third person now? It has like a
It
pseudo.
it does, but it's like purely accessibility. Like it is buggy as hell.
Okay,
Like
yeah,
if you like aim the camera down, your whole like the top half of your character just like bends down and it looks like they're doing a I don't know, the splits or something.
yeah. So that's one nice thing is that our niche is more clearly more forgiving with first person only. We've cut
Yeah.
third person combat. I don't know if it's forever, but we made that cut. The demo does have it.
It frees up so much for our animator too
It does.
to not have to.
And
Yeah,
because NPCs use the same animations as third person, so there's that. But also, player does so much more than an NPC
yeah.
Mhm.
in terms of moving and how they're acting. It's fundamentally different. And with things like climbing, it's a lot easier to think like, oh yeah. I mean, climbing. Honestly, I think climbing no animations in first person wouldn't even look bad, even if your swords. Who cares? Like Daggerfall-esque. But third person, that might look a little funky.
Yeah.
That's up to person per person. But that's the beauty of cutting third person. Is that kicking? That's another feature. I can add kicking so much easier now that I don't have to worry about
Making a
anything
third person kick
other
animation.
than
Yeah,
just having a first person kick a foot that appears.
a leg. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It just makes everything easier. That's an
Yeah.
example of a limitation that we should have had from day one.
And I for one am kind of glad that we're going with third person as kind of an accessibility option rather than it's like entirely separate, like fully fleshed out version of the game. Is like doing third person in parkour is it's easy enough, but doing it in first person is a completely different process and it does
Hmm.
not transfer.
Hmm.
Like you can reuse third person animations and sometimes they look good if you kind of tweak them. But they always look different, and yeah,
Yeah.
trying to use first person animations in third person, not a good idea.
No, it's gonna look like
Yeah.
shit. And especially if your game is first person oriented,
Yeah,
you got to make your animations in for first person. Like it's just not
yeah.
gonna work
Yeah.
otherwise. Yeah.
Like we have the lock on like directional combat that Daggerfall has. It's a quick toggle. I don't see anybody being able to use that in first person. That would be just insanely difficult. Or third person,
Third
not
person.
first person, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, it won't work in first person. It was designed for that, but it won't work.
Even in Red Dead 2, you can go into first person and you can turn head sway off and everything, and it still just doesn't feel quite right. It's still just it doesn't feel like a first person game. It just feels
Yeah.
like you're playing a third person game with a really tight camera angle.
Yeah, I tried a
Mhm.
mod for Witcher for first person. It was the worst experience of my life.
Did they do the rolls in first person?
Oh God, no, I don't think so. But that would be funny.
Okay.
That would be very funny.
It'd be amazing.
Oh, dodging. That's another feature that's easier to do in first person than third.
Yeah.
You just move the camera, easy. Third person, now you have all these animations. What if you're holding a sword? Fuck you. You know, it's a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I feel like most people like that play exclusively in first person, that's most RPG players. I feel like they only ever really use third person is if they want to look at what their character looks like.
Yes. Yeah.
and that's why
And
we
that's what
keep
we're
it.
doing for our yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, we
you
kept
can
that
walk
in Ardenfall.
around, you can walk, you can run, you can walk, you can dodge, you can use your quick bar. You can't do actual combat. You pull out your sword and we'll switch to first person. Well,
Any more questions from the
yeah,
audience?
let's check that before we wrap up. Thank you everyone for chatting and asking us questions. Let's see. Yeah, sounds like a lot of people are saying, yeah, first person focused. Yeah, it looks like there's no like specific questions, so I think we're pretty much good to wrap up.
All
Thank
right.
you everyone for listening in, and of course thank you both of you for joining us.
Yeah.
Well, I was told Jeff Keighley was going to be here, and so I'm very disappointed.
Yeah, I was waiting for Todd Howard. I'm kind of disappointed he's not here.
He's here in spirit.
That's true. Very true.
Todd.
No, it was a blast. Had a lot of fun.
Yeah, totally.
Should
Very
definitely
fun.
do it again.
Absolutely.
Agree.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, see ya, everyone.
Absolutely. Have a good one, guys. Thanks